everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube, or welcome back. This is your 6th Matlock Season 2 episode review. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe out there in the bigger world. Yes, I do apologize. It's been a bit. But hey, we had something out. For some reason, I got this weird thing on my neck. I'm not sure. It's like a bite mark. No, actually, not really a bite mark. It's more like a pimple. I don't know really what to describe. I don't know. I should go back to the doctor. Anyway, yeah, we're back. This is the last Matlock for a bit. We're going on almost a month-long break. Actually, not a month-long. We'll be back in 3 weeks. But, it just kind of sucks. We had a good cadence of Matlock episodes. It's kind of actually crazy by the time we get to the mid-season finale in December. I got the confirmation we're getting 2 episodes in December. And then, yeah, they're already going to go back to work in a couple weeks. So, most likely, yeah, we're probably not going to come back till, like, February or March. So, yeah, I don't know how that's going to work with the cadence of the flow of things. So, I'm really hoping for a very dramatic, like, mid-season finale to kind of wrap it all up, essentially speaking. But yeah, and also I kind of noticed a couple things about this episode, so I'm not sure if this is kind of like matching up the timeline with everything that went on a few weeks ago. But again, we'll see how that kind of turns up as the commotion kind of dials down for that one. But no, yeah, again, for me, to get back into it, I kind of I lost my train of thought there. I thought this was a good episode. I think for me personally speaking, this is probably my least favorite of the season so far. Not to say it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm only saying from the context of they're a building block episode. They're episodes where they're meant to ramp it up. Not every episode is going to be that, oh my god, here's a very revealing moment that's going to propel us to the next thing. There was a lot of great moments in this episode. Let me not disregard this episode's importance. I do believe that when 3-4 years from now, when I am doing a definitive review for Matlock Season 2, that and then again for the series review, God, I'm thinking way far out, but I'm pretty sure this will be one of those this is a binged episode where it is leading into the next episodes. And I think while doing the week-to-week cadence, it gives it a little bit of a different feel. Not a bad feel, it's a noticeable feel, where definitely after, every episode in the first 5 had a purpose. We each episode had a purpose. Now we're kind of again, like I said, we're in the middle of the season now. We're now in the core middle. The beginning stage is over. We are now in the middle. And what that means is that sometimes we have that little fluff. We have that little fluff, maybe pander some things out. But as long as it's entertaining and there's purpose behind it, then they shouldn't really be much of an issue, which is where this episode comes in. Where for me, again, I really enjoyed the episode. I did, but of the previous 5, if you're adding this one, it is my least favorite. Not because it's bad, it's just because that this didn't really have much going on. It didn't have that big last minute twist that I was ooh, on the edge of my seat about. It just didn't have it. And I think honestly, being a more emotionally charged episode and also a relationship building episode, I think from that standard that it achieved what it needed to do to be a part of the larger season. And I think on that merit, it's good enough. So with that being said, let's go through the Butcher recap and talk about this week's episode of Matlock. So we pick things up. I think we're in the lobby of the building. Maddie's waiting for Olympia. Obviously Maddie and her had a bit of a falling out. Not a falling, more like an impasse moment last week, where Olympia tells Maddie, I don't think I'm ever going to be in a position to ever trust you again, let alone be your friend again. And Maddie, obviously, who was willing to, for a brief moment, to risk her entire marriage to Edwin, her family, to be Olympia's friend, she didn't take that, she's not taking that sitting down. So she brought her a nice cup of coffee and a letter kind of expressing what does she hope what their future could be. It's not what could happen, it's what she hopes it could be. But however, Olympia is more we got business to do. We got cases to solve. We got matters to worry about. This moochy stuff. Let's put it to the side. let's focus on the cadence of the case, and then we'll go back to the larger, playbook of trying to figure out seniors' activities in Australia in a little bit. When they're on the elevator, they are visited by three nuns who are supposedly there on business, giving a little bit of again, the ironic insight for the current moral conflict between Maddie and this time Olympia for the week, about forgiveness, about mostly forgiveness. This episode is mostly about forgiveness. Um, Obviously, they don't pay much mind to it. They just assume it's something else. And while Olympia is ready to kind of get into Maddie about, like, okay, here's what the game plan is. Next up, the second ex-wife of Senior shows up with the three nuns. Apparently, she has business with them, and she heard about they've been falling a little bit of hard times in a legal standpoint. So she's there to like pass them along to Olympia to like, hey, they need a little assistance. You are my favorite partner here in the firm. You can go take care of it with your team. And she's like, yeah, of course. However, she does push Maddie away for a bit to have a discussion, because again, a couple of weeks ago when we like back in episode 2 when we had the whole all hands on deck meeting with the partner and the partners and everything, that's when she appeared and she briefly spoke to Olympia that Senior's leadership, his management style, it might be time to kind of make way for a new generation of leadership to kind of take over the firm. And she knows it's a little bit difficult to do so, since again it's not easy to rule out the manager partner of the firm, specifically for this specific location. So it requires a little bit more, it requires a little bit more like heave and push, so to speak. And she has been campaigning for the last month throughout the entire different firms on the East and West Coast, trying to see which of the major partners are willing to let Senior go. And she thinks she has some of the numbers, but she definitely needs a little bit of a boost from the New York office. And since that's where he's currently presiding in, then she's asking Olympia to lend her a hand and trying to get some of those votes pre-ready for the big vote in 6 weeks. Which will, I think, conveniently match the mid-season finale, so we will get to see that before the year ends. So I have a feeling that's going to go horribly wrong, but we will see in those 2 episodes. But of course, Olympia's a little bit concerned because, again, she just became a new senior partner. This isn't something that is relatively easy, and she said, "Well, you're with me, right? That Senior needs to go. So you should be ready and willing to kind of put in the work to get rid of him, even if that means having to do some shady stuff in the back end." So that's kind of where they leave it as they move on to the nun case. And I think her and Maddie briefly no. So they meet with the nuns. Apparently, the neighborhood's getting a little bit concerned because the church is doing more of a drug outreach program. That's coming up in the development pipeline, and they're concerned that they might be opening their specific neighborhood to more drug addicts, more homeless people, and it's like every neighborhood. Everyone always listens. We want to help the people out, but when the help comes to them, they're like, no, not in this neighborhood. So it hasn't hit the legal stage yet. This is just a zoning committee meeting. And they just need someone to kind of, testify on their behalf that, this is something that will benefit more people than it's harming. Obviously, it is a risk, but since the church very much is focusing on helping people, that this is not for the sense of creating violence and issues. This is all for the merit of helping, and hopefully that message will come across whoever does decide to come over to get the treatment they need. So it's an easy case with Billy and Sarah doing some of the grunt work for other future cases as well. Olympia does fill in Maddie about the current partner vote situation, and that she's kind of in a pickle where, again, she's the new partner, she's got enough things on her plate. And then you have, obviously this, of the case of how you're going to be able to do everything, plus talk to the other partners about potentially swaying their vote to the position of getting rid of Senior, essentially. And Maddie's like, hey, I can help out with that. You focus on everything else. No ever suspect it's coming from me because I'm just a junior level associate. I have no real, involvement in the vote race. I'll just be speculating, commenting. Maybe that'll sway some votes. And Olympia's like, okay, I mean, it's not my preferred plan, but I'm like, If you really want to do it, sure. And obviously, Maddie's only doing this to get back in Olympia's good graces. Like, say, see, I'm a friend. I can help out too. But yeah, no, so from there, I believe we cut over to Sarah, who's doing some of the grunt work in the library portion of the building, and Senior all of a sudden shows up, which I'm like, I mean, that's kind of intriguing. Senior and Sarah didn't even have a scene together until last week, and now all of a sudden he's buddies with her. And actually, no, he has an ulterior motive, because of course we know that Julian is technically 1 foot in, 1 foot out of the firm, and Senior is scared that Julian might be potentially pre-poaching some clients to whatever firm does hire him next. He might take those clients with him and lose business to the larger firm, which I'm like, Senior, your overall firm is a multi-state located firm. I think you would be fine losing a few. I get it. I get it. This is Senior we're talking about. So you want Sarah to kind of go in there and kind of get some photos, get some documentation of like his meetings, his trackings, and maybe Senior can do some preliminary work to absolutely make sure that that everything's fine, essentially. That, all those other clients, they're good. They're good. They're going to stay on the Jacobson Moore trail for quite a while longer. Sarah's a bit uncomfortable with this, but, Senior's, using her, noviceness, status at the firm. Like, but you are a real go-getter. Like, I know you can do this. And it's like, it's for the larger picture. And you never know. You never know when my recommendation can help you out in the future. And Sarah's kind of petering towards that, immediately trying to contact Billy, but Billy is kind of also going through his own thing, as the nun's appearance kind of reminds him of his child being born out of wedlock, not having married parents to come to the world with. And that's kind of something that's a little bit frowned upon in certain religions. Traditionally, it's more customary for the couple to be married before they have a child, so that, it's a child of unity, not of sin, as they call it. So yeah, I believe from there we go over to where do we go from there? Yeah, so essentially, I do believe, I think the next thing is Sarah trying to talk to Julian. Julian's in the middle of a phone interview. I can tell those vibes now. I really can tell when you're on a phone interview. And sadly, for some reason, she brings a necklace with her, which suddenly pops on the way down the stairs, and they conveniently fell on Julian's shoes. He does trip one time, catches himself up, which honestly, the way I watched that scene was like, it literally looked like something that I would do, where like, I'm falling, or I fell, and I immediately okay, back to it. Nothing happened. Nothing didn't work here. And then he immediately slips again, and this time busts his ass, and most particularly his shoulder. And I'm like, dude, I mean, he's living a cartoon. Like, just a few episodes ago, he yelled at Billy, which was earned, in a cartoon raised voice, and now he felt like a cartoon character. So I'm like, yeah, he's getting in touch with his Dipper roots again. It's been a while. So yeah, so from there, I believe, we cut over to the next day, or no, we get to the zone committee first. And, obviously, the representative for the neighborhood is like, okay, look, we just don't want this place here. We're all about making sure people get the help they need, but our neighborhood's clean, they're proper, but the church poses a problem because we prefer our safety, And then, thankfully, Olympia being the lawyer she is, she manages to outwit him, and they actually are able to kind of, get through to the people, and actually it does work out. Where the committee does rule in the favor of the church, so they are going to proceed forward with their plans. So I'm like, oh, that's kind of one and done case of the week, but no, not quite. Yeah, not really, not quite. Sadly, the next day, there was a break-in at the church, a little bit of rioting going on, and there was a report that they found drug needles, illegal substances on the premises. The cops were called. It was a whole big affair, and obviously now this is enough to kind of warn the neighborhood and their probability case to be moved forward to the court system, which obviously is not what they want to do, but sadly it is the way it is. Thankfully, Julian's on the mend. He is recovering, but Sarah feeling guilty about the whole thing, wants to be his nurse, wants to be his assistant, and Julian having one of those like, yeah, no, you, Jason Riddler, you know how to deliver comedic time. You know facial expressions so well. You do. It's like so great. It really is. Where he's about to explode when Sarah is trying to help him out or too much, and he calls Olympia's like, you gotta get her off me. Like, I can't deal with this right now. I cannot. I need to be able to kind of, have some sort of level of freedom right now, even if my current status kind of prohibits me, and I kind of do need an assistant, but like not like this, not like this whatsoever. So I believe we're in a very... This episode is also kind of styled a little bit differently. Usually the cases are kind of like, segmented back to back, in terms of days. It's kind of like a more rush cadence. This was more of a prolonged approach, as I believe when we do move over to the first court case, I do believe there is some issues with the overall thing of like, what was going on. And then there was the moment before where the nuns do explain to all of them, like, yeah, no, like, we did have it. We did have substances and needles on premises, because there was a time when we were getting a lot of people that needed assistance, and it was, during a very heavy season. They needed like a kind of like a shelter, but they kind of couldn't do without the substance. So because they were trying to help their fellow man, they offer them clean needles to use for their substances, and sometimes they would leave behind the substance, and they never got to cleaning it up. So they do admit to that, but Olympia is more along the lines, okay, we can twist this into a positive thing, so don't worry, we could definitely get something out of this, so don't you worry about it. But however, during this intermediate, while also Maddie's working her magic around the firm, trying to get people to kind of sway against Senior, which it is sorely working. Like, gossip can go such a long way. We also get little updates throughout the episode where Augie has been getting emails from his dad while he's in rehab, at least getting the indication that he is progressing well in his recovery. They are communicating, and everything's going well on that. But however, there is a bit of a bump in the road, as Olympia does remind Maddie that, like, we are not friends. This is business, so it doesn't have to be a friendly regard, doesn't have to be friendly update, doesn't have to be any of that. Doesn't have to be. And also the context of this whole thing, where like now the whole conversation is going from like the overall program and the safety of the neighborhood is now going specifically to junkies and the danger they poses to the specific neighborhood if more of them start coming in. Just the prosecutor's case of trying to push of like, here are some examples, here's what's been going on and everything of the sort. Obviously this triggers Maddie so much because she doesn't want to she doesn't want to be a part of it. She really doesn't. She kind of just wants to yell and say her piece, but it's just not as easy as one might think it could be. To the point where like she even talks to Olympia like, I can't do this. Like, the only reason why I'm here is because I want to show you I'm valuable, that I'm trustworthy, I'm your friend. And I'm like, Maddie, all you're doing is, yes, you are going beyond your capabilities, yes, but also you're just doing your job. Just letting you know that there are plenty of cases where people do not want to go do something. It's not because they want to be nice to their boss or anything. So they, they just need to get the paycheck. But I understand this context is different. I understand. I'm just saying from a core context, it's not really much different. It's not. And she leaves Olympia. She's like, yeah, I think it's better we take some time apart. Just you go focus on this case. I go focus on the speculations of the overall matter at hand. And with the vote and everything. However, as we get past the first week, where I think Edwin finally realizes that, like, I do not miss. I mean, I'm pretty sure he misses seeing Maddie on an hourly occasion. But I feel like it's like that context where like you're with someone for so many years, you briefly get off them, you kind of adjust to the new system, and then you go back to the old system. It's kind of like a bit of a hard adjustment. Edwin's kind of feeling that a little bit. Where, like, he does love having Maddie there, but, like, eventually he's like, okay, so why don't we just go back to San Francisco by this point? Is this really difficult? But yeah, no. But to go back to my original point and settlement, yeah, we passed a week. Julian actually did warm up to Sarah. Now he's using some of her organization tricks, using some of her wordings. So it's like, really good bonding between them. And, they're starting to, like, match each other's energy. Although Sarah does remember she does have a mission from Senior to to go in and get the daily planner, get the information from there. But of course, Sarah is finding difficulties of allowing herself to do that apparently. And from there, that's kind of where her hiccup is, especially with Julie having an upcoming big interview in just a matter of time. So yeah, so definitely she has to wind on the clock of like what is the important thing that she needs to do right now, so to speak. Then I believe when we cut back over to Maddie's second week on sabbatical away from the firm, while everyone's kind of getting a little pestered by her, Augie does reveal to her that sadly, even though him and his dad were having some very good correspondence, he hasn't been emailing in about a week, which is a bit concerning, but he did want to just keep the same energy going and everything, and Maddie knows, well, this was going to happen, When you're in the recovery, sometimes you're fine and some moments you're not. So definitely he's probably hitting a hard patch, and he just needs to be well enough alone, but eventually he will email back to you if he really wants to. So just be patient, and that's all that could really be said about it. That's when Olympia comes in and immediately kind of scolds Maddie, like, look, I understand you felt uncomfortable learning all this, but keep in mind you lied to me for a whole damn year. And with that being said, I'm allowed to be mad at you for a year. Should I choose to? I can be mad at you for 5 years. Like, what you did was still unexcusable, regardless of whatever noble purpose you have. My anger, my frustration at you is justifiable, and I'm more than allowed to keep it going as long as I want to, without you having to complain about it. But we have a larger case at hand. I do need you on hand. We do need to be together in the same room. We do need to work and figure this all out together. Also, I do know there was an update where Senior's ex-wife does call Olympia to let her know that sadly there was a vote in Florida that sadly flipped over. So they do need one additional vote to really guarantee Senior's removal from his post. Which is going to be an issue considering the fact that at this point in the list, Maddie kind of went for every single other partner, and so they're kind of like really deadlocked. There really is nothing they can do on a natural occurrence without pushing it and then raising suspicions as a result. So that is a major concern for them as well. I believe, I do know Maddie and Olivia does team up to like kind of get some sympathy points. They do reach out back to the community. They do find one particular person that is a native there who is still a user, but they are able to manage to get a little bit of extra information out of her to see what direction they can lead to the case. And during that car moment, yeah, Olympia and Maddie do have a heart-to-heart where Olympia does talk a little bit more about her dad specifically, her military background, and just how things were at the time, and just how cherishable family is to her, and also to the people she trusts. Where like she hasn't never had the cadence of like having so many people she can trust before, and again with how Maddie was to her in her life, that she felt like she can have natural friends again. But it just doesn't seem fully the cadence on this go around, and of course Maddie's just sitting there kind of just in her own space, and just kind of realize, yeah, you do have a point. I do know Julian is able to successfully get one of the clients that he was trying to get for the firm, and he and Sarah do celebrate, and Sarah does take that information back to Senior, saying, "Hey, look, I know Julian. He ain't gonna be he ain't gonna convert people. He ain't gonna be able to take people away from the firm. You have nothing to worry about." And Senior's like, that's a great opinion to have, but I didn't want your fucking opinion. I wanted my photos. You got them, and that's when Sarah kind of like again realizes that, yeah, this isn't gonna go away that easy. It really isn't. So I believe Olympia and Maddie managed to get their final case in the dock. They get their final witness to come up and telling the story of just, while yes, she did stumble on hard times and everything, the church being there gave her a second opportunity to kind of give her life a fresh redo. And it gave her the opportunity to have the resources to be able to kind of, have a sense of connection to something. And that, yes, the church may have been allowing some of these things to happen under the rug. It kind of was like, out defeated by the larger purpose, which was that they had safety, they had sanctuary in this house, and they were thankful for having that opportunity. And obviously, Maddie kind of, coincides with like what would have Ellie said if she was alive during a similar situation, and just the things that Maddie wasn't able to do with her before she passed away. It was moving. It was very moving, and thankfully, while the courts did still take away some things from the church, they're not evicting them, they're not kicking them out, they're fine. So that's still a big win for the team. So it's still a win. But the nuns did admit that, like, yeah, but like, we believe our purpose is helping those people, and it doesn't really matter if the courts say it. We're going to take this in a different approach. We're going to leave the church behind. We're still going to be connected with the Lord. We're still going to have our fellow sisters take care of things, but we need to, our purpose is to be on the field, to actually go and give the help, not to wait and expect the help to come to, for the promise to come to us. Which is a bit surprising, but again, at the end of the day, it is on their best cadence to do so. About it. I do know that Billy does finally work up the courage to talk to his baby mama again, and they do approach the conversation of getting married, and they do agree that they should. And I'm like, again, they're very much planting the seeds. Also, I kind of noticed that like Billy didn't have a really strong like voice line here. It was kind of murmuring. I'm not sure if that was purposeful or not. I like to view it as like with the actor no longer present to work. I guess they just couldn't afford him they couldn't like do extra ADR for him. So whatever they shot that day on camera, that's all they could work on. So that's my assumption. I'm not sure if that was a creative decision. Then it is what it is on that front. Sarah does sadly give in to her devil side, and she does give Senior the photos of Julie's planner, and definitely she does feel remorseful over it, since Senior kind of disregarded the positive words that he said to Sarah way early in the episode. So it does kind of hurt her that she just did this, and she kind of betrayed the trust of Julian as a result. Maddie and Olivia do have a one-on-one about everything that happened, that there is a better path forward for them. It'll just take still some time, but it feels like they're back on the straight and narrow. But of course, with everything going right now, their best chance is to make sure Senior does get voted out. But with everything going on with the partner standings, it doesn't seem like there is anything more they can do. But Maddie does remind her that technically someone who receives partner status kind of still keeps their voting privileges. So, and I forgot to mention that Olympia does call in a friend from a foreign land to help out with the case, and he was a former partner at Jacobs Moore, and he does still have his voting privileges. So him joining in could potentially flip everything over to have Senior get voted out, and that's kind of where they're standing at as they kind of prepare themselves. Like, okay, we're actually doing it. We're gonna kick Senior out of the office. And they kind of celebrate the fact that there is a good chance they might be able to finally put a close on Senior's reign on the firm. And that's where we end this week's episode of Matlock. So for me, yeah, I really, really, really like this episode. Again, I still think, even talking about it again, I still think this was the weakest for me. Not to say it was a bad episode, but definitely it was kind of missing the big pomp and circumstance. But that's not a bad thing. When you're making a multi-episode TV show, especially when you're in your second season, not all the times is everything gonna hit. I wish it did. I really did. But like, I trust in the team. I trust in the writers that they know what type of story they want to tell this season. And if this ends up being just a building block episode, again, we had Sarah and Julian literally hopefully the beginnings of their friendship, which of course Sarah's now guilty on. Billy kind of setting up his farewell swan song, which I'm like, kudos that they kind of had that preliminary setup sort of beforehand, and then obviously, taking a different step with Maddie and Olympia kind of trying to figure out where can they go from here. Can they even be friends again, or can they not be? And honestly, it was kind of sweet for them to like, talk about it and consider it as a result, that there is still a push for them to kind of, still keep going as friends, even if the progress does take up, some extra time than not. And again, honestly, regardless of it, just, forgiveness is important. You never know when a little bit of sorrow and sorriness is going to go a long way in life. You never really know. But with all that being said, I give this episode 2 thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think of this week's episode of Matlock. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from ActionX, reviewing every episode in the second season of Matlock. If you want to know what we're doing normally, what's to do besides our Matlock episode reviews. Right now we don't have anything on the consistent. We are working on our Walker Definitive Season 2 review. We are hoping to have that out before Thanksgiving. I make no firm promises. It is a very meaty season. I think it was the longest season of the 4, if I can remember it correctly. So yeah, definitely I have to work on that, but hopefully that will be our next What's in the Tube. As you may know, again, we are going to be on a Matlock hiatus until December. So we will be back, I believe, in a few weeks. So stay tuned when we do return. I can also say, without hesitation, that we are working on things in the back end. We're getting things ramped up for 2026. As again, we are not that far away from it. We do have other After the Theater episodes coming out very soon. I can't reveal the next movie review just quite yet, but we will be able to do so in the next episode review. So stay tuned for that. But again, thank you so much for watching this week. We will be back in a few weeks. So until then, have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family, your friends. Hopefully you eat lots of turkey. I live in America, so I'm just saying for context, happy Thanksgiving to all who do celebrate it. If not, just, you get a couple days off from work, because national holiday, so enjoy the time off. Just spend time with your family and friends. You never really know when they can go. You never know. But yeah, thank you so much for watching again. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, like, favorite, share if you want to. Ring the bell and follow us on social media for more. But until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.